Today I wanted to do a different type of video and to discuss the lessons that I've learned from being with a narcissist. And I know these lessons were kind of bitter lessons to learn, but the overall message is also a positive one because these lessons have helped me move forward in my life. And as we all know, the experience of narcissistic abuse is a very tough and heavy one. And that's why I thought it was even more important to share this side and what it's like to be on the other side of narcissistic abuse as well. So here we go. I've learned that being silent is the best answer to BS. It's the best way to protect myself, to keep my dignity, to keep my inner peace, and also to keep the focus on myself. And honestly, I thought this was really difficult because when I was in the middle of a smear campaign, all I wanted to do was to scream from the rooftops that it wasn't true and that this person was manipulating everybody. So it was very difficult to stay silent, but as I forced myself to stay silent, I learned how powerful silence really is, and that silence is an answer. Narcissists are very good at disguising who they really are. And that's why so many people fall for their so-called victim stories or their manipulation, or they think that they are really good people. But when I look back at the first time I met them, or any person that I've had a very bad experience with, I had always had that little voice in the back of my head saying, this person is trouble, or maybe not this person, or I would feel scared for no reason. So my mistake is that I didn't listen to these subtle feelings inside myself. I thought I was being judgmental. I thought that I shouldn't judge a person without getting to know them first. And so I overruled that gut feeling. But my gut feeling was never wrong, and I really needed to learn to listen to it properly. Feeling guilty is quite normal when you've done something wrong, but in these toxic relationships, I felt guilty for no reason when I hadn't done something wrong. I felt guilty for wanting to do something for myself, for putting up a boundary, for missing a phone call, for having certain thoughts like, is he doing this on purpose? When I was being duped once again. I felt guilty for leaving him, even though he literally bullied me away. And even for making this video, I'm still experiencing a form of guilt. Like I'm supposed to protect him, like a mother would protect her son. I've learned that I've taken on a lot of responsibility for things that were not mine to carry. Things that they should have taken responsibility for, but pushed onto me. I've learned that feeling guilty is a toxic glue that held me in these relationships, and that it stems from being overtly and covertly blamed for everything they did. I had to learn to leave the responsibility where it belongs. I grew up with a narcissistic psychopathic father and a covert narcissistic mother. And even though I have been in 3 healthy relationships, I still repeated the cycle, with one being a copy-paste of my father and the other being very similar to my covert narcissistic mother. And in a way, I feel that these relationships had to happen because I still had so many questions about my parents and why they acted the way they did. And being in these relationships and seeing these narcissistic behaviors play out with adult eyes and adult understanding, it made me realize that what had happened to me in my childhood had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with someone having a personality disorder. And so it wasn't personal. And because this explained everything, I was finally able to let go of the past. It literally had stopped haunting me. On some unconscious level, these people felt like home to me. They felt so familiar, and I mistook that for chemistry and being soulmates, where in reality, it was my old wound just asking to be healed. And so I learned that unless I heal myself, Unless I actively work on my boundaries and some crucial parts that were missing in my upbringing, I was going to repeat the same thing, just a different face and a different name. And this was a big motivation for me to put in a lot of time and energy. And I'm very thankful for the change that I've already seen. I make different choices now, and that makes my life much easier. Being in relationships with gaslighters, I often felt pushed to defend myself, which I think is a natural response when someone is firing lies at you or accusing you of something that you didn't do. I couldn't stand the injustice. I just wanted things to be right. And more than anything, I wanted to be seen for the person I was. And so when I was being accused of something that I didn't do, I started to defend myself. And after the relationship ended and the smear campaigns began, this got even worse, because now I was not only defending myself in my head against the narcissist, but also against the other people who may or may not believe the stories that the narcissist was telling. And it was completely draining me and driving me crazy. And then there was this moment where I asked myself, what if I don't need to be right? What if I just stop caring? What if I just let them be wrong about me? And from that moment on, all of the resistance in me was dropped. But more importantly, the control that the narcissist had over me and over my thought patterns even, it was gone. And this was a very big breakthrough in my healing journey and a big life lesson for me as well. I know the truth, so I don't need to argue it. 1 time is a mistake, 2 times is character. I learned that I was way too forgiving and that I have given both toxic men so many second chances. And you know, people say it's a good thing to be forgiving and it's a good thing to have the empathy to understand why someone made a mistake. Well, I have felt that my empathy was used against me and that it was actually a weakness when it came to these types of people. So I could say about them that 1 time is a mistake and 2 times is character. But this was actually also true about me. How much was I going to put up with? When was I going to stand up for myself? And so I had to see my own weakness, and I had to learn that forgiveness is actually only a good thing when you're dealing with someone who has the capacity to self-reflect and grow. Narcissists bait you into an emotional reaction. So whenever the narcissist did something wrong or hurtful and I asked him why, he would then turn things around on me, start calling me difficult and trigger me by using my past trauma against me. And once I got upset, he would then point the finger at me and say, I was the problem. Well, as you probably know, this is a very well-known manipulation technique that narcissists use to avoid accountability and responsibility for their actions. The last time I saw him, he had done something horrible. And when I asked him why, he started his infamous list of stonewalling me, calling me difficult, and then using my past trauma against me. Well, why was this last time so important? It's because I refused to give him an emotional reaction. When he called me difficult, I used to go like, why am I difficult? I've only asked you why. But this time I said, okay. He then broke up with me because I was supposedly such a difficult person. And again, I said, okay. Then I was accused of cheating, even though he was the one who cheated. And as I stayed calm there as well, he went for the one that always got me upset. He would use my past abuse against me and say things like, I can see why someone would abuse you. You must have deserved it. I should talk to your abuser. In fact, I'm going to call this person right here, right now. And this is where I said, get out of my house. Which was obviously turned around into me having anger issues and PTSD issues, and he was the poor victim of me. His control was in getting me upset. He wouldn't stop triggering me until I got upset. And when I stopped reacting, he had nothing, no control, nowhere to hide or divert from his own evil actions. And so I learned self-control. And this was very, very difficult to learn, especially as I had a backstory of abuse and I had my trauma and I had triggers, and there was nothing more painful than someone you love being that mean to you. But controlling my emotions is where I found my strength. I took my power back. Looking back at these two relationships with toxic men, I realize that I have been listening to their words too much. Especially the covert narcissist was extremely good with words and throwing around sentences like, I'm just being firm but fair, or I'm just doing what's good and right for everybody involved. And this made me feel that he was coming from such a good place and that he always meant well. Whereas in reality, nothing about his behavior was fair, and he didn't do what was right for everybody involved, as I was constantly duped by his behavior. But his language really threw me off guard. His language made me feel that he was such a good guy. And so I learned that it's very important to look at the actions instead of listening to people's words. Because had I just deleted all of these nice, loving, beautiful words, I would have come to the conclusion that he was a mean, selfish, cheating and manipulative man much, much sooner. So I learned how important it is to look at someone's actions instead of listening to someone's words. Mixed signals are a huge red flag. The narcissist would be all nice and loving one day, and then the next day he was distant, cold, and it was like I was invisible to him, like I never even existed for no apparent reason. And with the overt narcissist, he would drop anger bombs that came out of nowhere. So whatever way, I would find myself constantly wondering, like, what's going on? What happened here? So the inconsistent behavior is a huge red flag. Consistency is key to a healthy relationship. I used to have this I should do everything on my own type of independent attitude, which stems from childhood, where I was always left to deal with things on my own. And so after the breakup, I felt so confused and ashamed and isolated that initially I crawled into a fetus position. But soon I realized that I needed others to get out of this properly. And so bit by bit, I started reaching out to people. And there was one friend I called daily in tears, and he kept telling me to call back when things started to get heavy again. And I used to say sorry every day for needing the support again. And he really kicked it out of my system that I was constantly apologizing. I reached out to other friends and to my brothers, and it's actually ironic to say that while my ex went to my family the evening of the breakup, called my friends and created such drama in my family and life in general, trying to get his so-called victim story across, crying on the phone to my friend whom he never even met in his life, and making people believe that he was such a well-meaning, good person after just having another episode of triggering and using my past trauma against me. If it wasn't for the pain and drama he created, I wouldn't have felt the need to break the cycle of independence. So I got to break a childhood pattern, and I got so much closer to my friends and made wonderful new friends who had been through the same thing. So another lesson I learned is to not isolate when things go bad or when I feel confused and ashamed. I hated this one. I hated this. I hate going no contact with people because there's always something in me that feels that if we just talk it out, everything's going to be fine. And as we all know, with narcissists, it doesn't work that way. And I'm very easy to forgive, which is a weakness when it comes to people like this, because whatever they did to you, they will do it again and again. I've had to go no contact with family members and 2 ex-partners. And if I were to do it all over, I would do it again. Because even though they were disrespecting me, treating me horribly, or abusing me, I was the one who felt guilty. And I was the one saying sorry. And I was the one constantly trying to repair things. And they were the ones who kept repeating those behaviors. So I had to learn that it's okay to let some people go. Having the right people around me makes me feel happy and uplifted, and it brings out the best in me. Whereas being around these toxic people makes me feel drained, and I lose my energy, and I'm not as productive, and I'm only happy when they treat me well or when they are not around. And especially looking back on those relationships, it is clear as day. So the lesson there was to choose the right people in my life and to be very careful with my choices. When I entered these relationships, it was for the qualities that they showed in the beginning. The overt seemed very nice and helpful, and the covert came over very altruistic and nice and like the overall good guy. You could say that he would fit both the communal and the covert narcissist type of category. As we know, narcissists treat other people well and only show their true self to the people closest to them. And this was no different with me. I both knew them before the relationship, and they never seemed abusive to me then. Now, I could say that they deceived me, manipulated me, tricked me, and so on. And this is true. They didn't show me who they were before we got together. They pretended to be nice and loving, where in reality, they were controlling and abusive, even though we did have good times as well. Especially with the covert one, it took a long time to figure it out. And for a good time, I thought we were in a good, loving relationship. I just thought he had struggles with addiction, which took me on a sidetrack for a while. But as he would constantly switch between the nice, altruistic character and the cold, mean, passive-aggressive man who would punish me in subtle ways, it left me confused to which one of the 2 he really was. And all I can say is that the overt one was much worse with the abuse, but also easier to spot. So which one is worse, really? I can't take responsibility for their actions. They are the way they are. But I can take responsibility for myself and for not seeing inconsistent behavior as a red flag, and for not leaving when my gut feeling started telling me that there was something wrong. Only when I take responsibility for my own part in this play, I can fully heal. And it doesn't mean that I'm as bad as the abuser. I never deceived anyone or pretended to be someone I'm not. But taking responsibility is taking the power back into my own hands. It is like saying, okay, I have done that. It wasn't my best choice. I didn't see things for what they were back then, but I see it now. And so I take the responsibility to work on myself and to never let this happen again. And this is how I moved forward. I went into therapy. I learned about boundaries. I learned about narcissism. And I feel that this part is so important in healing that I personally can't do without it. With both toxic relationships, my body started weakening and I was developing health issues. This never happened with the healthy men that I've dated. And I can say that my body started sending me signals very soon. Either I had pains or injuries, or I became super weak and exhausted. I was mentally overwhelmed constantly. So even before I knew that this person was toxic, my body knew already. And once I let go of these relationships, my body and health were doing much better. So I learned to take the signals of my body very seriously, because when I was in these relationships and I started going bad, I was like, how do I know it's them? How do I know it's this relationship? It's like I wanted proof or something. But feeling the way I was feeling was my proof, no matter how vague my symptoms were. It's like my inner self knew best. I just needed to listen to it. So I'm hoping that sharing these experiences was helpful for anybody. And I just wanted to let you know that even though this was a horrible experience, experiencing narcissistic abuse, it has also deep down had some positive effects on me as well. And I know that there are many people out there who experience growth after narcissistic abuse. So let me know if you have anything to add, or if you feel like, wow, you missed something. This is what happened to me. I feel so much better because of this or that, or I learned this or that. I'm really curious to read or to learn what you have experienced. And yeah, for now, see you next time.